What up, what up, what up? Welcome back to the Bad Podcast, Brad and Dawain. And man, if you need help, you got to find out who to call.
Ghostbusters!
Ghostbusters. That's it, man. No, we're super excited to be back in here, man, with my brother Brad. Brad, what we talking about today, my friend?
All right, we're going to talk about accountability. We're going to talk about reaching out for guidance. A blind man stood at a corner waiting, not for pity, but for someone to notice the silence in his need, never asking, yet hoping the world might still offer a hand without being told.
I like it, man. Let's get into it.
Are you ready? Are you ready?
What it look like, what it be like, what it do. Back in here, another episode of the Bad Podcast, Brad and Wayne coming to you live. Well, not live, but whenever you listen to this, where you are in the beautiful world, you catching it real time, man. Super excited. Got my brother Brad in here, man. Another good episode, man. We are on 133 episodes, man. We've been cooking, we've been cleaning, we've been doing all the things, trying to get it done. But man, super excited. Definitely want to shout out the folks on YouTube. We had a lot of chat on YouTube. I did not want to call anybody out this time because it was actually a lot of chatter, Brad. So that's always a good thing. And y'all excuse me. Alicia is texting me asking me what is the code to the gate. So let's get my sister in the gate real quick.
I'll take over. I'll take the wheel here.
Yeah, man.
Shout out Candy Parker. She actually shot me an email with the screenshot and everything. So, guys, at the end of this month, at the end of June, doing another giveaway, doing a book, maybe a hat, maybe some bracelets. So Candy Parker entering the running once again. I think she's emailed me like 2 or 3 times. So shout out to Candy. Shout out to everybody that's getting involved. So drop a comment on the live feed on the YouTube. Drop a comment in Facebook. Shoot me an email. Take a screenshot of you listening, and you'll be entered to win that giveaway at the end of June.
Yeah, man. Yeah, good stuff. And it's funny because we do so many of these and we do this. We're in and out every week. Me and Brad, we literally like knock it out and then we keep moving, man, because we got always something going on. But like I even forgot what the episode was about. But I see that we mentioned a lot about the Ozempic stuff. And I'm gonna read this one just because it kind of stood out. Miss Faye Price 6773 says I'm diabetic, so I have to take Ozempic. It does not help my weight loss because I have elevated blood sugar, and because of a steroid, Ozempic is not a fix. You still have to watch what you eat and work out. So, very true. Especially those that are diabetic and it's prescribed. But like we mentioned before, and even some people didn't know we had content on that. So make sure you check out our YouTube channel. Do the scroll. You can even search it, and we have a couple of videos on that. But definitely appreciate Faye for sharing that with us and the many other folks in the conversation. So jumping in, man, the blind man. Talk to me, B. Let's get it.
Yeah, just to speak to what you were saying too, a lot of companies right now are knocking Ozempic and knocking these things. We talked about it last week. Like it is a fix to maybe get yourself to a point of transition, but it is a transition point. It is not a forever fix. Fitness, you got to engage in fitness. You got to engage in physical activity. You got to engage in the nutrition piece, and that's what E2M is, right? We do the physical activity. We do the nutrition. We do, so we're not knocking Ozempic. We're not knocking any of that weight loss stuff. Like I said, it's a transitional tool. Once you get to that transition, then it's time to engage in the more important things, physical activity, nutrition, so on. But blind man standing at the corner, and the blind man will wait forever unless he speaks up, right? And right now we're in an era where it's scary to ask questions. It's scary to speak up and speak your mind. I was always the kid in high school or elementary school. I was afraid to raise my hand. I never, ever wanted to raise my hand. And it was always funny. Like I always had a question like, hey, why did he do she and that do this? And it was always like my buddy, like 3 seats down, he'd ask the exact same question, but I never put my hand up. And then I always felt a sense of being even more silly because I didn't ask that question. I'm like, that was my question. I wanted to ask that. So I think we gotta do a better job at reaching out for assistance. Like a lot of people, their big breakthrough is one question away. Like there's always
Mm,
somebody better than us, right? There's only a handful
mhm.
of greats in the world. Oh, the top of their totem pole. You got one basketball player that's the best. You got one football player that's the best. You got one entrepreneurial person in that field that's the best. But everybody else is below that person. So there's always somebody better than you, or at a different level, a higher level than you, that you can reach out to for assistance and guidance.
Yeah, no, so I was the opposite, man. I did not mind asking questions. I I did not mind. I was like, "Oh, put your hand down. Like we're not taking questions at the moment." But no, that's so true. And especially, you know, in the time that we live in, where, a lot of information is, readily available. But what I find out is a lot of people don't know how to search for that information. And so they don't want to ask the question because they feel intimidated, and then there are resources available. They don't know how to use the tools in order to get their answers, man. So it's really important, like you mentioned, find somebody you can glean from. Find somebody you can ask questions, you can bounce things off of. It's really important that you find somebody like that, especially if there's an interest. And that's definitely like, whenever I find something that I'm interested in, my default is to, kind of connect with somebody, especially. So if you don't have like in bodybuilding, I have a coach, so I could go to my coach. If you don't have a coach in the certain thing, then you can reach out. A funny thing is in the bodybuilding world, sometimes the coach, well, I guess in any world, the coach
Mhm.
get a bad rap. If you don't win, then the coach didn't do something right. And so there's a couple of guys, I'm definitely on the outside of the fence of this game, but there's a couple of guys that they have a coach, and then they kind of get caught asking everybody else questions that they should
Mm.
say, getting all this extra input. And it happens in fitness. Even with E2M, when we give out the plan and then people go to a local personal trainer and they was like, you can't have this, they kind of try to put extra input, man. And so, just be mindful. I know it's kind of a tangent, but just be mindful, of where your information is coming from.
Mhm.
You definitely want somebody that knows more than you, or somebody that has a little bit more wisdom than you. But sometimes it could come from a wrong place. Sometimes you can ask somebody, because what is it? Don't ask a single person marriage advice. Like, sometimes it could come from a place of not knowing, man. So
Mhm.
just, I guess, kind of be mindful of that.
Well, I think the reason we do that is because it's more comfortable to ask somebody that's lateral or behind us
True,
for that guidance than it is to ask somebody of a higher level. Like for
true.
me, when it comes to the fitness game, and I don't do this as much as I used to, but I would rather find a runner that's exactly the same as me or behind
Mhm,
me for advice. Just I mean, for a sense of confidence. Like I'm going
yeah.
to ask that person because I want to feel more confident in myself and in my question. Versus if I was to reach out to Matt Wilpers, that's with Peloton, and he's a great runner. If I would have asked somebody like that, like it'd be very intimidating for me to go up to somebody like that and say, "Hey, I need some running advice." But that's the only way that you're going to get
Mhm,
better. That's the only way you're going to level up is if you go to somebody that's a lot better than you. Say, "Hey, I need some help." Like for you, Coach Eric's a prime example. Like he's levels ahead of you, but that's why
mhm,
you went to him because he's been through the trenches. He's
mhm,
been through the trials and tribulations, and that's how a legacy is built by going to somebody that's bigger than you, expressing a little bit of vulnerability, getting outside of your comfort zone, and saying, "Hey, I need some help." And especially, I think is it June or I think it's June that's a mental health mental health.
So I think it is,
I know May was
in re
mental health.
yeah, like me, man. So reason why, and this is funny. I know Adrian probably don't listen to these, but we kind of we had this conversation. We had the episode. If you guys don't know, we had a new episode of the Eager to
Mhm.
Motivate podcast, and we interviewed Jarvis Green from the Patriots. And Jeff said, it was Men's Mental Health Month, and she was like, I don't know if it officially is or whatever. So that's why I'm not confident right now. So
It's
just
Google says June.
Okay, that's the same thing I said. I was like, Google says June. So,
Google
all right.
says June. Hey man, I asked Dr. Google if if this mark right here means this, that, or the other. Google is that level above me, so I always trust and have faith in Google. But mental
Yeah.
health, like this is a prime time to talk about this because the fellas
Yeah.
especially
Oh
have
man,
a
yeah.
tough time voicing
Yeah.
why they're not where they want to be, or how can I get assistance? How can I
Yeah.
reach a lot an optimal level? And I listened to a little bit of that Jarvis Green podcast, and he was saying the same thing. Like when you go into the locker room, you can't show your emotion. You
Yeah.
can't show
Yeah.
how you truly feel because you think you're gonna be judged. You probably
Mm-hmm.
will not be judged, but you think
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna be judged because how many people have the same sense of a feeling as you do? Like I feel sad, I feel mad, I feel this, I feel that. But
Right.
if you express that, there's gonna be more people that follow suit and open up.
Yeah, yeah. It's like you mentioned, it's a level of vulnerability and it's a level of humility, being humble enough to
Oh yeah.
admit you need, some help. Cause, men, we naturally, our egos, that is the that's the main culprit right there, man. Like we naturally, feel a certain way when we, we when we don't know something, we feel a certain way, and it's like a defense mechanism, to kind of close off and whatever. So yeah, definitely for the men when it comes to asking for help, asking for things, I mean I think it plagues so many people, man. Just on the, like you mentioned, you talking about NFL players and just regular Joes like me and yourself. Like there's certain instances where you much rather figure it out. Like you much rather instead of putting yourself out there, being vulnerable and just saying, "Hey, I'm feeling like this. Can you help?" Or I'm starting this adventure. Do you have any wisdom? Something like that. And that's just something we have to, be proactive in trying to get better at and trying to uh just grow in that area, man. But it's not easy because
Hmm.
again, it comes with vulnerability when you're vulnerable, and especially if you had a bad experience, with it, where you did it and somebody shunned you or
Yeah.
somebody ghosted you. Because I mean, I always go back to when I started podcasting, man. I used to reach out to everybody, like all the guys I looked up to. I used to reach out to them, and you see that red message and
Hmm.
no response. Like, yeah, okay, all
Yep.
right,
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so I made it my business, man. If anybody reached out to me about podcasting, like I give them the farm, man. Like no, like people like you need to come up with a course, and like nah, man, like so many people left me on red or gave me vague advice. I was like, nope.
Yep.
Once I figure this thing out, man, freely receive, freely give. I think
Hmm.
that's written down somewhere.
Yeah, yeah. I like that a lot. I was listening to Andy Frisella's podcast one time, and he mentioned the same thing. I think he's at a level now where he can't probably keep up with his messages and
Right.
comments and such. But when he was first starting off, he'd get 100 comments on a picture that he would post, and he would write back to every single one of those. So,
Yep.
for anybody out there that's just getting into the podcast world or just getting into the entrepreneurial world, any world that you're trying to level up in, it's going to take 50 no's before you get that one yes.
Yep.
So I say be persistent, be consistent, and never stop. But going back to what we were talking about with ego, you walk into the room, and that fellow over in the corner that's usually the loudest. That's probably the most confident person, but that person probably has the least knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that we're so drawn to people like that is because they are loud. So always, like you said right from the get go, Dwayne, like always be very aware of where you're getting that information and that knowledge,
Mm.
because when
Mm-hmm.
you walk into a room and somebody has a big ego and they're shouting and saying, "I know this and I know that," it's not necessary. It's not necessarily the smartest person in the room. And when you start to navigate those waters, and you navigate with a big ego, it leads to poor decision making. It leads
Mm-hmm.
to insecurities,
Mm-hmm.
because it's almost like you're on a ship, right? And you make one bad decision, and you don't own that decision, and you're heading north when you should be heading south. But instead of saying, "Hey, I need to look at the compass and I need to talk to the co-captain," I don't know what the pirates use in the terminology, but I need to reach out to the co-captain and say, "Hey, Cap, I made one bad decision." because my insecurities are speaking volumes to me now, and I'm heading north versus south, I'm afraid to ask, hey, what do I have to do? Like, how do I flip the sails around so I can head south versus north? And then all of a sudden they're in the Antarctica, or they're in Greenland when they should be in the Bahamas, soaking up all the vitamin D. And that essentially blocks your growth, right? That blocks you from finding the treasure because you made the one bad decision, because you let your insecurities speak to you, versus saying, you know what, I'm going to own this. I'm going to reach out for some advice. I'm going to say, hey, co-cap, I made a poor decision. I need some help. We need to get this ship turned around. And at that point, you pivot and you start making the right decisions. And you start heading towards the treasure.
Yeah, man. No, that's big. And I think we see it real time where that's not the case. Where there is no course correct. And you know, the ship just keep going in the wrong direction, you know, and the crew, you know, because especially if it's a lower crew, I mean, they're like, I know this ain't right, but you're the cap. You know?
Let's keep going.
Like Greenland, it is, you know.
Yeah.
But you know that, I mean, that actually gets into something else, man. When you're part of the crew and you are on the ship, you know, do you speak up? You know, do you say, hey, you know, North Star's that way? Like, you know,
Right.
like what, how do you approach that? You
Right.
know, and that in itself takes courage. That in itself takes, you know, a little fortitude and being willing to stand up and you know, and speak up on that or whatever. So yeah, that's a whole nother episode right there, man.
You're not. I mean, we could talk about that for days, but you know, just talk about intimidation. If you're the man in the mailroom, you know, if you're Will
Right.
Ferrell and Elf down in the mailroom drinking bourbon out of the coffee mug, and you're dancing on the table, you know, it's hard to go to Papa Hobbs and say, hey, man, you got to do this, that, and the other. But
Oh,
now my mind's at Elf and Will Ferrell. But what's great about that movie is they literally take the mailman, Will Ferrell, they take the elf and use his story
uh-huh.
to create their new publishing business. Like, what,
Yep.
I mean, this all kind of ties in, but it doesn't, but it does. But it's hard.
Listen, I already got the reel together in my mind. Like that this part, man, I'm gonna have Elf on the table doing the
Get
Russian dance.
it.
I got it
Hey, make
ready.
sure you try to collab with Will.
Yeah, I know, right? No,
Yeah.
but that's so, man, I never thought about the big picture of that aspect.
Mhm.
Like from the mailroom to, you know, his story actually saving that whole company. I mean, it
Yeah.
was a big, huge,
Mhm.
huge business. And his very story ended up saving it all. You know,
Mhm.
it's crazy.
And for anybody that's listening to this or watching this, know that this is a not a real story. It's Buddy the Elf with Will Ferrell and Walter Hobbs. I don't know his real name, but just a reference for those that know the movie and how you can be at the very bottom. And like, so the character Elf in that movie, like, he wasn't scared to say anything. Like, he went
Mm-mm.
to the worst coffee shop in New York, and he's like, "This is the best coffee in the world." And just having that vulnerability to say, "I'm just going to go out there and give it a shot. I'm going to go out there and give it a chance, and
Yeah.
live to what you want to live to, man." Like, I always bring this story up in my lives. Sushi. My sister's a big sushi fan, and she lived up in Buffalo, and like 2 miles down the road from her house. She'd rave about this sushi joint, and I would always tell her that, no, I'm never eating sushi. I don't eat raw fish. I don't rock like that. It's one of my favorite foods today. Why? Because I got a little vulnerable. I went
Uh-huh.
out there and had one piece. I was like, golly, this ain't too bad. I guess I'll have another piece. We don't do things sometimes because we have it built in our minds that it's nasty or it's not for me,
Mm-hmm.
without ever trying or without ever speaking to what's
Mm-hmm.
important to us. And you never know. Like, if I said something to Jeff, that's been real heavy on my mind, but it was something that maybe he didn't align with at the moment. It could be a big wake up call for him. Like, holy cow, it'd be that aha moment. Holy cow, maybe he is right. Maybe she
Mm-hmm.
is right.
Mm-hmm.
And just to speak to our audience, if you're in the mailroom, you're sipping bourbon out of a coffee mug, go up to
Dancing on the
Walter
table.
Hobbs, you're dancing on tables. Go up to the top level. If you have something of value, speak that something of value, and you never
Mm-hmm.
know how far it's going to go.
Wow, we went in a totally different direction.
Don't we always
Uh,
navigating the unknown territory and unknown waters?
yeah, man. Yeah. No, that's I mean, honestly, that was a really good, like, little
Mhm.
offshoot, because it I think a lot of people can relate to that, situations where they should have spoken up, or they should right now. It might be in that situation right now, and this conversation might be the very thing. It was like, you know what? I'm going into that office tomorrow, and and we're gonna tell them the story. So no, that's really good.
Before you do, just just know your audience, know your information, go in there with some confidence, but know what
The
you're
Bad
talking
Podcast is not responsible for any uh
You better put a
bad
disclaimer
podcast
on this one.
is not responsible for any drastic career moves, and we will not be compensating for any loss of
you you know
employment.
you know I'm gonna go way back a handful of years on this one. I'm gonna speak to an ex-employee. And she was a run coach of ours, but she reached out to me one time after I went off on a live, and just said essentially what we just talked about for the last 20 minutes. And she quit her job. She said, "I want to chase something bigger. I want to chase something different." And she has her own run thing going on today, but she quit her job on the spot. But that's just that's a component of chasing your dream. And like Dawain said, like I say, we're not responsible if you
No.
if you make a big massive change or massive shift in your life. We are not responsible, but do your homework.
Now, if you now that jump calls you to win, and there's an increase, you can make sure you look for sponsors. You can always reach.
You will be the primary spot, the title sponsor of the Bad Podcast, brought to you by.
Right, right. If it's a win, now, like, if you hit, don't forget. But
Yes,
if it's
yes.
a loss, we're not responsible.
Oh man, this was a fun one.
It is. It is. It is. All right, man. So, anything else, Brad? Before, because we're hitting right at that 20, that sweet 20 we like to hit.
Yeah. Hey, yeah, I do. Today is the last day you can pre-register for New Jersey. That gets your t-shirt package. The t-shirt package ends today, July 1. I think it's
Yeah.
July 1.
Yeah.
Yeah, July 1. So today's the absolute last day you can pre-register for Step Jam New Jersey. You can sign up all the way to the day of, but today's the last day to get that t-shirt. And every single meetup that we've ever been at, we've had at least 50 people at every single meetup say, "Hey, can I still get a t-shirt?" Folks, you can't get one after the fact. So get it now. Get
Yeah.
it right now.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you brought that up. Because July 19th, we're going to be in the building, New Jersey. Man, New Jersey is always a different vibe. Make sure you guys, if you hadn't already made plans, make plans to come out to see the team. This is the last in-person meetup of the year. So if you're listening and you hadn't seen us all year and you miss us, make sure you make arrangements to come to that July Step Jam, man. It's going to be great. It's going to be hot. It's going to be get your water guns.
Bring your super soakers.
Yeah, man. No, but I'm excited. So you guys remember to bring us some chicken and waffles while you're there. It's also my anniversary, so just any gifts, cards, make them payable too.
Sponsors, donations.
Right. No, man, I'm really excited about it. And actually, my girls are coming too. We're putting them on the airplane for the first time, so they don't know yet. They don't know
Boy.
yet. So we're excited about that. But yeah, if you guys haven't registered today, when you listen to this podcast, make sure you go register so you can get that tee. Be ready for the race. But like you mentioned, you can register all the way up until, and we would love to see you there for sure.
Yeah.
All right, Brad, close us out, man.
Whatever decisions that you have made up until this point, never let them define you. Reach out for assistance, reach out for guidance, and navigate the turbulent waters, but head in the right direction while you do so.
Yes, sir. Till next time. Peace.